My partner of 5 years announced, "I'm no longer physically drawn to you, I crave a dominant man." I responded, "I get it." Then I signed off on the executive role she hoped her new dominant partner would secure at our workplace. When she spotted me in the executive suite, her complexion turned ashen, as she grasped that I had become her superior. My companion of 5 years, Tina, terminated our partnership last Tuesday. We shared a residence, so she had the courtesy to do it in person, but that was the only courtesy she extended. She seated me on the couch, in the living area of the home I own, and delivered a monologue she had evidently practiced. She claimed she cherished me as an individual, but was no longer romantically attached. She explained that for some time she had sensed an absence, and then she dropped the devastating remark. "I'm simply not attracted to you anymore, David," she declared, gazing at me with a kind of detached sympathy. "I've come to realize I require a genuine dominant, someone who seizes control, an authentic commander." The slight was so straightforward, so patronizing, that I didn't even experience fury initially. It was just illuminating. I've always been a reserved individual. I'm not the most vocal person in any gathering, I don't boast, I don't need to overpower discussions. I guide through demonstration, via proficiency. I resolve issues, I construct systems that function. I had always believed she recognized and appreciated that trait in me. Evidently, I was mistaken. She interpreted my calm assurance as frailty. I didn't debate with her, I didn't become protective, I simply regarded her and waited for the inevitable follow-up, because I knew there was additional information. She interpreted my quiet as permission to proceed. She admitted that she had grown intimate with another person. A colleague from our firm, Chad. For background, Tina, Chad, and I are all employed at the same expansive engineering corporation. I serve as a lead infrastructure designer. I engineer the foundational structures for our most intricate assignments. Tina works as a coordination supervisor, so our roles overlap in related areas. And Chad is a lead revenue tactician. He's precisely the type of individual you'd envision when you hear the term dominant uttered sincerely. He's boisterous, openly self-assured, dons extravagant attire, and excels at delivering polished showcases. He's pure appeal. The depth, however, has always appeared dubious to me. Tina rambled endlessly about Chad's determination and his relentless momentum. And then she disclosed the true essence. For the past 8 weeks, a significant new vacancy had been available at the organization. Head of Unified Operations. It's a major advancement, a commanding position intended to connect the engineering units, coordination oversight, and revenue planning. The new head would fundamentally oversee all 3 of our divisions. Tina informed me, with a conceited thrill, that Chad was the front runner. She confessed she had been assisting him in refining his submissions, supplying him confidential details from the coordination side to bolster his proposal. She was fully committed to his triumph. She viewed his appointment as their springboard. They were set to become the fresh, influential duo in the workplace. As she shared all this, I simply remained seated. And when she concluded, after she had completely explained why I was insufficient for her, I regarded her and stated, in an utterly steady tone, "I get it." She appeared somewhat taken aback by my absence of feeling, but she accepted it as surrender. She mentioned she would require 7 to 14 days to locate alternative housing. I merely nodded. Here's what she was unaware of. While she and Chad were scheming his ascent, upper leadership had been harboring grave reservations about him. They perceived what I perceived. Plenty of spectacle, but little substance. His approaches appeared impressive in a slideshow, but they frequently disregarded vital engineering constraints, which my unit would then need to rush to correct. Due to this, roughly 4 weeks prior, the executive vice president, a gentleman named Marcus, had discreetly contacted me. He explained that although I wasn't the apparent selection from a revenue angle, I was the sole contender who genuinely comprehended how all components of the organization interconnected. He stated the firm required a commander who could produce outcomes, not merely assurances. He extended the head position to me. I was reluctant. I relished the direct involvement. I'm a designer, a creator. I wasn't certain I desired to enter upper administration and maneuvering. I informed Marcus I needed time to deliberate. I didn't disclose it to Tina, because our partnership was already strained, and I didn't wish to introduce a complicated professional element. My reluctance, my preference to analyze rationally, was the exact quality she viewed as lacking drive. But following her monologue, after she labeled me inadequate and flaunted her new dominant before me, all my indecision evaporated. Rejecting the advancement now would confirm her entire distorted viewpoint. Embracing it was the sole option remaining. It was no longer about professional growth. It was about dignity. The following day I entered Marcus's office. He glanced up, startled to see me. "David," he said. "What's troubling you?" "Marcus," I answered. "I've evaluated your proposal. If it remains available, I agree." A broad grin of alleviation appeared on his face. "That's the most welcome update I've received all month," he remarked, grasping my hand solidly. "We were counting on your decision. The formal notice will circulate in a firm-wide message on Monday morning. Welcome to the team, head." I passed the remainder of the day in serene concentration. When I returned home, Tina was present, already organizing some possessions. She was humming softly. She mentioned she planned a triumphant meal with Chad on Monday evening, following the major notice. She even dared to tap my shoulder and remark, "Don't fret, David. I've already discussed with Chad. Once he's head, he'll ensure you're placed on some of the key upcoming initiatives. He truly appreciates your engineering abilities." I simply regarded her and nodded. "That's considerate of you," I said. "This weekend is tranquil. I've relocated her items from the primary bedroom to the spare room. She believes it's merely me requiring distance. She is completely oblivious to the message scheduled to reach every employee's inbox at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. She thinks she's aligning with an emerging leader. She has no clue she's about to meet her new superior. Update 1: Monday morning dawned with an odd air of certainty. The ambience in the residence was heavy with strained, uneasy quiet. Tina, conversely, appeared to be drifting on a wave of arrogant contentment. She was more communicative than she had been in months, prattling about the triumphant meal she and Chad had arranged for that night. As we prepared for the workday, she lingered in the bathroom entrance while I was grooming and offered an unrequested suggestion. "You know, David," she began, her tone laced with false worry. "You're an outstanding designer, likely the finest in the firm, but you simply lack that commanding essence. You ought to study Chad. Observe how he dominates a space. It could benefit you over time." I merely cleaned my blade, dried my face, and regarded her in the reflection. "I'll remember that," I said. We traveled to the workplace in separate vehicles, a practice we had initiated a few weeks earlier as the gap between us widened. I arrived at my station at 8:30, removed some outdated documents, and readied for the day. Tina was at her post, conversing animatedly on the phone, undoubtedly with Chad. At precisely 9 a.m., a fresh message alert appeared on my display. It did on everyone's. The header was straightforward. Notice, new head of Unified Operations. I didn't access it. I didn't have to. Rather, I observed Tina. I watched her select the message, her expression bright with victorious anticipation. I watched her gaze sweep the opening sentence, and then I observed as all trace of color vanished from her face. She shifted from bronzed and radiant to a ghostly, unwell pallor in roughly 3 seconds. Her lips parted slightly. She blinked and reviewed the message. Then she reviewed it once more from across the workspace. I could see her hands begin to quiver. She gradually raised her head and her gaze searched the area until they fixed on mine. I didn't grin. I didn't revel. I simply maintained her stare with a completely impartial demeanor. The view of me composed and already engaged in tasks seemed to shatter her daze. She rose abruptly from her seat and strode toward my station. Numerous individuals turned to observe her. She was advancing with such intensity that she appeared to be quaking with fury. She halted before my station. Her hands balled into fists. What is this? She whispered sharply, her voice unsteady and low. This is some prank, correct? How did you manage this? You took this from him. Her voice was escalating in pitch and she was drawing attention. Employees were now openly gazing. This was the instance. This was where the fresh hierarchy would be established. I gradually rose, looking down at her as she was several inches shorter. I maintained my voice soft, compelling her to incline slightly to listen. A minor authority gesture. Tina, I said steadily. This is neither the moment nor the setting for this discussion. My office is always available, but I anticipate you will behave appropriately. We have an initiative review gathering planned for 10 o'clock. I'll expect you in the primary meeting room then. We can address your issues regarding the initiative lineup at that point. The hue returned to her face in a heated, furious blush. She was at a loss for words. She had approached to challenge her former partner, the individual she had just declared inadequate. She was now being spoken to as a report by her new superior. She remained there for a few more moments, faltering, before she appeared to notice that all were witnessing her inappropriate display. She pivoted sharply and hurried back to her station. Across the facility, I could only picture the collapse Chad was experiencing. His whole approach, his entire persona at the firm was founded on boldness and the image of being the successor. Now, he hadn't merely missed the advancement, he lost it to me. That night, the showdown at the residence was precisely what I anticipated. She was awaiting me when I entered the entrance. She charged me with being a scheming, retaliatory viper. She claimed I had orchestrated this from the start to disgrace her. I allowed her to rant until she exhausted herself. When she concluded, I finally responded. I didn't do this to you, Tina. I did this for my own sake. You clarified exactly what you seek in a companion. You stated you desired a dominant, a commander, someone who assumes control. You chose based on your view of power. It appears you selected the incorrect contender. I passed her and headed to the kitchen for a drink of water. You're correct about one aspect though, I added, facing away from her. The situation has shifted. It is entirely unsuitable for you to reside here any longer. This is my residence. I require you to secure alternative accommodation. You have 7 days. The resistance faded from her then, substituted by a growing dread. The truth of her circumstances was overwhelming her simultaneously. Her dominant partner had faltered. She had forfeited the influential duovision. And now she was forfeiting her residence. Her scheme had not simply collapsed, it had rebounded in the most dramatic manner possible. It has been 2 weeks since my advancement, and the consequences have been both foreseeable and, in a sense, gratifying. The initial week focused on solidifying my command, and Tina and Chad did not simplify it. But their efforts to weaken me only reinforced my standing. My first formal action as head was to convene a session with the leaders of all units now under my oversight. This, naturally, included Tina, speaking for her coordination team, and Chad, speaking for revenue planning. I aimed to examine the complete initiative lineup to pinpoint vulnerabilities and possibilities. Chad entered the session with his typical boldness, but it was fragile. He was attempting to behave as if nothing had altered. Tina sat at the distant end of the table, mute, declining to meet my gaze. The primary subject of the session was a significant new venture that Chad had been promoting for months. It was his pride, the foundation of his case for the head role. Tina had been its strongest advocate, ensuring her coordinators gave it precedence. When it was Chad's moment to showcase, he delivered his standard performance. He guided us through a polished display packed with grand terminology and hopeful forecasts. When he completed, he surveyed the room, anticipating praise. Instead, I spoke. Thank you, Chad, I said evenly. The forecasts are indeed bold. However, I dedicated the weekend to assessing the fundamental structure needed to back this approach. Could you please navigate to slide 17, where you describe the data merging procedure? He fumbled with the controller, a hint of doubt on his face. He displayed the slide. As I interpret it, I proceeded, addressing the whole group. Your approach depends on instant data alignment between our outdated stock system and the fresh cloud-based evaluation platform. However, the outdated system's interface has a strict inquiry cap of 1,000 calls per hour. Your outline here would demand at least 10,000 calls per hour during high demand periods. The system in its present state cannot handle this. It will collapse. I wasn't confrontational. I merely presented truths. I provided evidence. I exposed the central defect in his entire approach, a defect that anyone with profound engineering insight would have noticed, but which he, in his revenue-oriented realm, had entirely overlooked. The room fell silent. Chad's face reddened. He had no response. He muttered something about his engineering advisors guaranteeing functionality. Then your advisors were incorrect, I said plainly. We must pause this venture until a full structural assessment. I want a feasible outline on my desk in 14 days, not a slideshow. Tina, please instruct your team to lower priority on all assets assigned to this venture and redirect them to the Phoenix venture, starting now. Tina merely nodded, her face ashen. She had to remain there and publicly disassemble the very venture she had supported, the one meant to be her and Chad's path to prominence. In one 10-minute interaction, I had revealed Chad's inadequacy and reclaimed authority over the firm's path, all by merely performing my duties. Their subsequent action was to attempt to gather allies. Tina started voicing grievances to her professional acquaintances, individuals she used to dine with, about how uneasy and difficult I was rendering the environment. She strongly suggested that I was fostering a negative workplace, leveraging my new role to penalize her for our separation. It recoiled dramatically. The staff at our firm, particularly on the engineering side, prioritized skill above everything. They had all witnessed Chad's dazzling showcases and had all been compelled to manage the chaotic aftermath of his flawed outlines. They admired my contributions. They observed me terminate a poor venture and preserve the firm millions in squandered assets. They didn't perceive a resentful former partner. They perceived a capable commander reorganizing. Tina's grievances merely portrayed her as immature and spiteful. Then came the genuinely underhanded tactic. Beaten professionally, they opted to assault my standing. One of my prior ventures, an elaborate software revision I had personally designed, was in its ultimate rollout stage. Late one evening last week, an individual accessed the system and modified a vital code segment. It was a nuanced alteration, one that wouldn't trigger an instant failure but would generate a severe data integrity problem about 7 days later. It was crafted to appear as if I had planted a delayed crisis in the system just prior to my advancement. It was a crude, frantic attempt to portray me as unskilled to upper leadership. It was an awkward, desperate ploy. The following morning, during a standard inspection, I promptly detected the irregularity in the code. It wasn't my creation. The reasoning was careless. I didn't alarm. I didn't even reference it to anyone initially. Instead, I proceeded straight to our firm's digital security records. Every modification, every access, is documented and dated. It required less than 60 minutes to locate it. The unapproved modification occurred at 10:47 p.m. the prior night. It was recorded under a temporary elevated access set. And the network address from which the access originated was linked directly to a terminal on the 4th level. Chad's terminal. I now possessed solid, irrefutable evidence of intentional corporate interference. He wasn't merely unskilled. He was a danger. And I had him cornered. Final update: it has been 90 days since my advancement and the concluding elements of this phase have settled. The tale of Chad and Tina at our firm is concluded. After uncovering the proof of interference, I did not challenge Chad or Tina immediately. That would have been chaotic and inappropriate. Instead, I behaved like the head they claimed I couldn't be. I assembled my proof, the digital security records displaying the network address, the date of the unapproved modification, the initial code compared to the changed code, and a short objective overview of the potential harm it would have inflicted. Then, I arranged a session with my superior, Marcus, and the human resources director. I presented the proof, calmly and factually. I didn't present it as a private matter. I presented it as a grave and intentional violation of corporate safety and ethical standards. I informed them, a senior employee deliberately attempted to disrupt a vital firm venture. This poses a threat to our operations. The response was precisely what you'd anticipate from a large corporation confronting a clear internal risk. Human Resources initiated a complete official probe without delay. Given the electronic proof, it was a straightforward resolution. Chad was summoned to a session with Human Resources and legal counsel. He reportedly attempted to refute it initially, but when they showed him the records linking the action directly to his terminal at a time when surveillance video confirmed his presence in the facility, his defense crumbled. He was dismissed for serious violation, effective at once. He was removed from the premises by guards, holding his items in a cardboard container. Being terminated for major misconduct is a lasting stain on a professional path, one that is extremely challenging to overcome. The probe inevitably extended to Tina. While there was no direct evidence of her involvement in the interference, her established connection with Chad. Her vocal explosion on the day of my advancement, her grievances to co-workers about me fostering a negative environment created a very evident pattern. She was determined to be engaging in a sequence of inappropriate conduct that was fostering a harmful workplace climate. She wasn't dismissed, but her outcome was nearly more severe. She received a final documented caution and was horizontally moved to another sector, an administrative dead zone of the firm that manages outdated clients. Her coordination supervisor designation stayed, but the assignments were insignificant. Her professional advancement at the firm was indefinitely halted. She was occupationally secluded, performing a stagnant role, deprived of any sway or status. The influential duo was dismantled. Chad was jobless and shamed. Tina was marginalized and disgraced. The rumor network, as expected, completed the details. Chad is reportedly still fighting to secure a new role. The account of his departure from our firm has, naturally, circulated in our sector. Tina endured another 30 days in her new position before she silently departed. She couldn't endure the daily disgrace of her downgrade or the glances from past coworkers who knew the full account. The latest I heard, she had relocated from the area. As for me, I'm flourishing. My unit is more productive than ever. We've effectively initiated 2 significant ventures, and staff spirit is elevated. The admiration I receive from coworkers is gained not through boisterous speech or hollow appeal, but through consistent guidance and demonstrated achievements. My efforts speak for themselves. Reflecting, Tina was accurate about one point. She said she needed a dominant. But her concept of what that entailed was entirely flawed. She was attracted to the most vocal, showiest display in the space, confusing his boldness for power. She didn't grasp that true power, true guidance, isn't about the volume you produce. It's about the bases you establish. The challenges you overcome, and the calm assurance that stems from knowing you are skilled and in command of your own path. She sought her dominant, and ultimately, she discovered one. She just never recognized it was the individual she was abandoning.